Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great stream with a great guest that I think you're really going to enjoy. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that over here at Blaze TV, you can pick up some great exclusive content. Look, we know that the right is winning some victories. They are gaining momentum. We are all excited about that, but ultimately, there's still a lot of work to do. The fight's not over, it's not even close, and you know that these media sources are going to return to censorship. You got a honeymoon period right now, but it's not going to last forever. So if you want to make sure that you have access to all of my show, even behind the scenes stuff, things that are special events, things that get censored, then you need to head over to blazetv.com/Auron and use my promo code Auron to subscribe and get $20 off with the promo code. If you subscribe, it's just $8 a month. That's like the price of a decent coffee. And when you use that promo code Auron at checkout, you're going to get the discount. That means you're only paying 26 cents a day to stand with a platform that stands with you. So if you want to support the show, head over again to blazetv.com/Auron and make sure to subscribe. All right, guys. So I've heard that the woke has been put away. It's over. We don't have to worry about this anymore. Everyone's going to walk away. We're done with the trans stuff. It was so unpopular. And clearly the Democrats are just going to give up and they're going to do something else because of how. Oh, wait, that's not what happened at all. Actually, they continue to push for this stuff. And one of the wildest places this is happening is Colorado, where they have state legislators that are signing up people for all kinds of crazy legislation, restricting the rights of parents, restricting the rights of businesses to use just basic pronouns, basic names, even banning normal uniforms for people so that ultimately you can't assign someone their gender uniform. There's a lot of people trying to fight back against this. Chase Davis is one of them. He's a pastor in Colorado. He's also got his own podcast, the Foolproof Theology Podcast. Chase, thanks for joining, man.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Auron.
Of course, we're going to get into the meat of the issue here in a second. But before we do, you had a protest here recently. You guys had a demonstration, a rally to get together a number of pastors and Christians to let people know what was going on. What was that like? What was the response?
Oh, it was a great time. We had so many people show up, about 300 people with a couple days notice. And I like the number 300, not because of the movie 300 necessarily, but because of Gideon's 300. But it was a great time. We had lots of pastors show up, like you said. We had about 5 pastors speak, 3 state representatives, all of them Republican, spoke out against this bill and many others that are coming down the pike. And, it's funny. I've seen some pastors get involved in this way, hosting what we called it kind of a prayer walk. I wondered if we should rebrand it as a prayer march, but we circled the Capitol praying. There were signs, that kind of stuff. Different organizations were part of it, and we just gave several speeches. But it turns out you can just do stuff. You can just get a permit and go call on the state to repent of their sins and their wickedness. And it's very encouraging to Christians and also God-fearing Americans who may not even attend church yet, just people who think this is wacky, not just wacky, but evil legislation that is being passed. And so there's a lot of people that have been very encouraged by it, and we're seeing a lot of good movement. We tried to, our organization, Fight 1312, we're kind of a loose coalition of pastors across various denominations, Southern Baptist, Presbyterian, CREC, EV-free, non-denominational. And we all just said, hey, this is unrighteous. This is really bad for people. Does not honor God. And we think we should encourage people to follow God and follow his ways in all of life. And it turns out there's a lot of people that are actually in agreement with us, even if they're not Christians just yet. And so we were really encouraged. I mean, it was a great time. I've never spoken at a political rally, so it was a bit strange experience for me, but our guys did great. Most of them are great pastors, great communicators, all of them are, and they gave great speeches. You can go find that on my Twitter for anybody who wants to see my speech there. But it was a wonderful time of encouragement, and that was on last Thursday, leading into Easter weekend.
All right. Very importantly, did you circle the Capitol 7 times? Were any trumpets blown? Were any jugs smashed?
So what happened was, I think I could confidently say the Capitol was at least encircled 7 times. There was a shofar present. I've never been in the presence of a shofar. This is very common in some church circles, not the ones I'm in necessarily. But a shofar is like that trumpet kind of horn, and so that was blown after every speech. So it was a good time. I don't know that any jugs were were smashed. We did crush a bunch of water bottles because it was like 75 degrees. I got sunburned. By the next day, it was snowing in Colorado. So that's just how it is out here. But it was a great time.
All right, guys, we will get into the details more of what is going into Colorado or what is going on in Colorado. But before we do, let's hear from today's sponsor. This episode of the Auron MacIntyre Show is proudly sponsored by Consumers Research. You've heard about Larry Fink and BlackRock and ESG and all the ways that they're ruining your life, making your groceries more expensive and making your video games more woke. Well, Consumers Research has spent the last 5 years making Larry's life hell, and they're just getting started. Their work and its consequences have been profiled by the Washington Post, New York Times, and most recently, Fox News business reporter Charlie Gasparino wrote a whole chapter in his book, Go Woke, Go Broke, on how effective they've been at dismantling BlackRock's ESG patronage scheme. He's making Larry Fink lose the last bit of hair on his balding head, and you should follow Will's work on X so you can laugh along with him. His handle is at Will Hild, at Will, WILLHILD, on X. All right, Chase. So, the basics for people who haven't been paying attention, they're not aware of the legislation in Colorado. What is this bill? Where does it come from? What is it demanding?
Well, the bill comes from the pits of hell, as far as I'm concerned. But as you rightly introduced the show, what's happening in states like Colorado, where the Democrats have a majority in both the House and legislature and in the governor's office, is they're radically trying to transform and like hedge against any kind of federal incursion. So we saw this last year where there was a big fight in the state about two things: one, school choice, and two, abortion. And for the left, they wanted to make abortion, basically making a constitutional amendment to adopt abortion into the Constitution. Of course, our church and many other Christians across the state were trying to petition the government and solicit signatures to get another bill that would abolish abortion. And I don't believe we reached the threshold mark for those signatures, but this is kind of what you're seeing. It's a pattern now. I think Washington's doing something similar. This bill, particularly House Bill 251312, euphemistically called transgender rights, does a number of things that are incredibly wicked. One, of course, referring to dead naming and misgendering, and that goes for any places of public accommodation. So if you're a business owner or you have any public place and you dead name or misgender, as it's called, you could be brought before the Civil Rights Commission. They're essentially trying to Jack Phillips the entire state. Anyone who disagrees with the transgender ideology, they're gonna bring the Civil Rights Commission, which is exactly what Jack was put through for 10 years. Another thing, like you mentioned, was dress code violations. Now no longer can schools have dress codes because that would reinforce gender norms. The most kind of devious part of the bill talks about parental rights, and of course, my heart is for God-fearing people and Christians to understand when the left puts this stuff in there, they're going to try to nuance it, they're going to try to caveat it. And so I'll say what it is and kind of show their hand. What they do is like basically, if a parent does not affirm a child's chosen gender, then that authorizes a judge or the magistrate to come and take that child out of that parent's custody. So it's a violation of parental norms. Now, they say it's very selective. They say it could happen. Okay, so they say it's in like a divorce dispute, and it's held by the judge, and the judge has to decide who gets custody. The judge could consider this, but we all know that this is how the left plays their games to get power. It's essentially state kidnapping from parents who don't go along with transgender ideology. That's like the most radical part of the bill. This isn't unheard of in the United States, but it's definitely one of the most extreme left bills put forward. And so that's what's kind of going on the bill. There's several others, one related to taxpayer funded abortions. But the whole kind of Democrat Party in Colorado is just going lockstep with this stuff. It passed through the House along party lines, Democrats 7, Republicans 4. And so right now it's kind of held up in limbo, waiting for the House to take it up.
Chase, are you telling me that someone is going to use the Civil Rights Act, like civil rights law is going to get used in order to restrict Christian freedom and destroy the truth and ultimately drive a wedge in civilization between parents and children? That's so surprising. Who could have seen this coming? Who could have predicted such an outcome?
No one.
Yes, it's very bizarre. I guess everyone who points out these problems is probably just a racist, right? Like that they're all just looking for Jim Crow. There's no real concern that one might have that this overarching second constitution could ultimately be used in a way that is not in no way the original understanding and could eventually destroy everything that we know and love about the country. That said, we have a scenario here, obviously, where most people saw the Trump victory. They saw the mandate that came from Trump and the fact that won the Congress, won both House and the Senate. Theoretically, we have a conservative Supreme Court, though they literally just stabbed all the conservatives in the back again and said that we can't deport illegal immigrants without giving them, 19 different appeals. But we'll get to that soon. Don't worry, we'll have that episode. Ultimately, most people saw that victory and they just kind of said, oh, well, it's all over. The wokeness is just over, right? Like it lost at the ballot box. The cultural momentum must be dead for a victory of that size. So we don't have to worry about this anymore. But it sounds like what you're saying, and this is what I've seen, not just in Colorado, but in other states, is that what we're getting is a retrenchment. Like ultimately, the left is still very, very invested in this ideology, especially obviously the true believers, the vanguard, the diehards. They still treat this as a religion. And so their plan is, well, ironically, to use states' rights to actually deploy these schemes, deploy this stuff before the federal government can get involved, before they can put up any barriers or any standards or any restrictions. And they're hoping to build this so deep into the infrastructure of the law that ultimately, if the Trump administration or someone else tries to come along and say, no, we're not doing this anymore, this is over, that it's already dug deep into their legal system.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, they're very entrenched and they know how to use power, which is something conservatives should ponder. But you're absolutely right. I mean, who could have seen this coming? We've had great books written on how the Civil Rights Act not only was misunderstood at the time, but has become corrupt over time. And this is what they're going to continue to try to trot out. In fact, when Republican legislators asked in the House in Colorado, they asked, "Hey, did you stakehold this with anyone else that would be opposed to transgender ideology?" They compared anyone that disagreed with this kind of stuff to the KKK. So they said, "Why would we talk during the era of civil rights? Why would we talk to the KKK about civil rights?" And so this is how they view their opponents. And unfortunately, many conservatives, many God-fearers, many Christians are simply just like too willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. They think they are quote unquote good faith kind of people who really want the best for people. It's like, no, these are wicked laws written by wicked people studying the doctrines of demons who are trying to push this wickedness in our state. And so this is exactly what you're saying. They're doubling down on this. I think it's insane. I mean, like most people think this is insane. We saw this nationally and kind of the rejection of woke. But these people are diehard true believers, and they're going to, I guess, go down with the ship. I'm not sure. But this is how they're going to operate. And so they're very clever. They work in the dark. They didn't even announce this bill until March 28th, Friday, March 28th, for a hearing the next Tuesday. Thankfully, lots of people rallied. That's when it first came to my attention. I sent out a tweet about it, kind of a call to action. And then we immediately spun up kind of a pastors cohort. One of the unique things, Auron, about this kind of pastors thing, the Fight 1312 kind of coalition, is not only how it spans denominations, but also it's mainly like medium to smaller sized churches. And it was kind of a call to action for the larger churches. It was kind of a, grassroots kind of populist sentiment where it's like, look, we've got these major Christian organizations, Navigators, Young Life, Compassion International, Focus on the Family. We got those big evangelical organizations in Colorado. And then we've also got mega churches in Colorado, like all over the United States. And so we're trying to encourage them to speak boldly. And as soon as they speak boldly, like one guy, Flatirons Church, which is one of the biggest churches in our state, it's in Boulder County, and he spoke out this morning, and our coalition is happy to champion him speaking out as well. And so we need these people with larger platforms than us, with larger influence than us, to speak out and equip their people, disciple their people in their church to know the times and know the truth of God's word, and how these legislators are really conniving and pushing wickedness in our state.
Your camera is lagging a little bit, but luckily your audio is good, so we'll keep going there. Don't mess with anything.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Like I said, the audio is coming through crystal clear, and that's what matters. So ultimately, we have a scenario. I think most people look at a place like Colorado, and it's not obviously a red state. I don't think anyone's confused about that. But they probably don't expect that level of radicalism, that initiative to kind of push the agenda that far in a place like Colorado. How much of this is proximity to California? Is this the native feel of Colorado? If is this the temperature of what you would expect in Colorado, or is this bled over from being, a refugee site from the People's Republic of California? Why do you think that this is being pushed now?
Yeah, so it's a lot of people who have moved into Colorado. Most of these people, these legislators, have come from somewhere else. They are pushing this ideology. And like you said, there was a lot of people from California that left and moved here, could find more affordable housing. Now, housing prices in Colorado are out of control. In Boulder, they kind of always have been out of control where I pastor. It's always been a very, expensive market, but you're seeing this statewide. And so, yeah, there a lot of them are transplants. You look at kind of the resume and where these people come from that are pushing this stuff. It's out of staters, and Denver kind of became a hotbed for a lot of this stuff. Because what happened with the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, it wasn't just the legalization of marijuana. It was the type of people that were drawn to that kind of culture and kind of a lifestyle of getting high and all the values that come along with that. And it wasn't just a libertarian ethos, which is what Colorado used to be. Colorado used to be very libertarian, kind of the West, and that's very common in the Western United States. Just leave me alone. You live your life. I don't want to impose on you, all that kind of stuff. And that's never where it ends up. It always ends up in kind of woke social dogma being permitted and then eventually enforced upon other people. And so, yeah, there are a lot of Californians, but it's a lot of people who are just diehard true believers, a lot of like social activists, a lot of people who are involved in kind of government programs, all that kind of stuff are pushing this stuff. And it's very, like I said, it's heinous, it's wicked. It's hard to believe that a state like Colorado, which 30 years ago was known as kind of red, especially for the evangelical landscape. It was kind of you might call it a hotbed of Christian. But a lot of those individuals have kind of lost their appetite, I guess, for the fight, and so now they're not really speaking up as much. They're not getting involved as much, which is really sad to see, because we need them in the fight. And Colorado is actually a very winnable state in terms of like if the Christians could get engaged and knew what was going on. I spoke at Colorado Christian recently, and I heard sentiments from some of an older generation who were like, we're just so busy with grandkids and traveling, we didn't even know this stuff was happening. And so we need to bring more awareness. That's why I'm thankful for you having me on the show, is because we need to bring more awareness to more people, for more Christians to get involved. A lot of pastors don't want to speak up because they're either scared of their 501c3 status or something like that, or they're scared of offending kind of the random blue-haired feminist that comes to their church. And it's really just not hard. This is a huge opportunity for God to work here, and we're seeing a lot of good progress and fruit come from it. One of the guys who kind of joined our coalition early on, Pastor Jeff down at Brave Church in Denver, he's a pastor of a megachurch. He was one of the only megachurch pastors that kind of signed on to our statement, and he spoke at the Capitol last Thursday. And so I just want to commend him and his courage, because it does take guts when you run a big ship like that. There's a lot of things you got to consider, but he took great stands during kind of lockdowns and masks and all that. And so he's been really good and courageous all throughout. So I'm really thankful for Pastor Jeff.
Yeah, that partly answers my next question, but I wanted to get the whole answer. What do you feel is the temperature of Colorado in general? Do you think it was just an ignorance of people not knowing what was going on here? Do you think the majority of people in Colorado ultimately support this? Is this something that got snuck in by radicals in a moment? Or is this something that you think has a certain level of popular momentum among voters in Colorado? Might have lost you there. It looks like our connection is a little dicey. All right, guys. Well, while I wait for Chase to hopefully return there, like I said, this is something that we are seeing over and over again. That the wider understanding as to whether or not the woke will be put away, whether or not we will step away from the progressive radicalization. I think a lot of people, initially with the victory of Trump, assumed that that was going to be automatic. That this, you'd have some lagging pieces here and there. You'd have some holdouts. Of course, some of the crazies are still going to be screaming on a university campus somewhere. But in general, we were going to see a stepping away from this, especially this stuff, right? There's not a lot of people who ultimately you would think prioritize the transing of children, the pushing of the trans agenda, making sure that you can't. I think we might have Chase back here.
Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
My internet decided to drop out.
Yeah, no, seems like you're having an exciting time. So before we lost you there, my question to you was, a lot of people in California, or rather in Colorado, do you think support this? Was this something that was kind of snuck in at the last minute? Is it something that's very unpopular, but that just the radicals got on the agenda? Do you think there is actually like a popular voter mandate for passing this type of legislation in Colorado?
No, I don't think the voters of Colorado support this. I think it's wildly unpopular, even though it's a blue state and went blue against Trump. We're hearing from organizations like Gays Against Groomers. We're seeing radical feminists, TERFs come out against it. We're seeing people who are, special needs and kind of that community come out against it, who aren't Christians necessarily. So, like, this is wildly unpopular. But unfortunately, for a lot of conservatives, they're so kind of deeply in that mind of like live and let live, and they don't want to bother anybody, that they have a hard time knowing what action to take. We're seeing different state representatives get involved, Jarvis Caldwell, these kind of people. And so it's good that people are getting more involved and kind of waking up. But I think one thing that we need to pay attention to in Colorado is, which is true, I think in other states like Texas, even though it may be red, would be that, look, a lot of people are kind of like late to the game. And I'll confess, like, this bill came out of nowhere for me, but there's been groups in Colorado like Colorado Parent Advocacy Network and others that have been dealing with this for 6 years. They've been highlighting this, and it's kind of like that frog in the boiling water. They've been introducing these bills over the last 6 years as the Democrats have had power. And on their face, you may think, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not, until they come out with a bill like this, and you're like, oh no. And then you look at what led up to this, and they've been doing this the whole time. So this ideology, it is popular in, like, kind of some secular culture like Denver, Boulder, other places, but it's wildly unpopular across the state, including most people who wouldn't even call themselves Christian. This is insane. We're hoping it just gets killed in the Senate. We're not sure. In fact, one of the biggest LGBTQ organizations in Colorado just pulled their support for it last Thursday. I like to think it's because we prayed and we spoke, but who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but they just pulled their support for the bill.
What does it say, do you think, that it's TERFs, it's feminist radical feminists who oppose the changing of the definition of women, that seem to get more politically active and get more political traction than Christians? I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously, because they're feminists and because they have the cultural momentum and status that comes with being left adjacent, their concerns get heard more by, I think, fashionable outlets. They're given the time of day. And so unfortunately, there's a tactical advantage they have there. But I think it really says something that, that they are so critical to the opposition to something like this, when Christians seem more hesitant and unwilling to discuss that. I mean, doesn't that say that the feminists are more religiously devoted to their understanding of feminism than many Christians are to their religious understanding of God's order?
I think so. And I think many Christians have just been so poorly discipled, and they haven't been given God's word and how it's been applied throughout history. They haven't really been educated on what it looks like for Christians to get politically engaged. And they bought, what's wild, I moved to Colorado in 2009. There were coexist stickers everywhere. And what's funny to me is the Christians, it used to be kind of a joke, coexist. But I think they bought it. Like, they bought the lie. They said, okay, cool, we will become kind of a ghettoized community. They have to advocate for our own special interest. And, we never want to get rid of the liberal order. We just want to coexist with you all as long as we can have a seat at the table. And they accepted that deal. And that's a deal with the devil for Christians. That's not how it's going to work in God's world for Christians. And I think a lot of pastors and a lot of Christian leaders, they just haven't equipped their people on what it looks like to be politically engaged. We're seeing a lot of people my age, millennial and younger, who are either in ministry or Christians, and they're kind of going, hey, like, what have we been doing for the last 20 years? Like, why haven't we been getting equipped on this? I think a lot of Christians, they have kind of this natural instinct to want to not be too like offensive or mean. They want to be nice people. And they kind of they wanted to throw off kind of the moral majority type attitude that kind of felt a little more belligerent. And so they adopted the kind of coexist, kind of the liberal order idea. Not to mention, for Christians, we care a lot about seeing people saved. We want to see people come to know the living God. And we just celebrated Easter yesterday. It was a great day. But a lot of Christians, because they want to see people come to know Jesus as Lord and understand him as Lord and worship him rightly, a lot of times their strategy for seeing that come to bear in other people's lives is to never upset them. It's kind of what's called relational evangelism, where you just kind of, you don't disagree with somebody who voted differently than you or has the rainbow flag out front. You never want to offend them because maybe one day, they may want to hear about Jesus, and you just want to show you're a nice person, and that'll show them that you're not like those mean Christians they've heard of somewhere else. And that kind of attitude is really kind of a loser attitude, where you're not entering public discourse. You're not really engaging in ideas. I'm not saying you need to go out and be unnecessarily offensive or provocative necessarily, but you can just disagree with people. You can say, hey, I think that's bad for people. They obviously think your religion is bad for people too. And so I think that it's just equipping people in how they relate to their neighbors, love their neighbors. And that's the thing a lot of Christians have been duped by, is they think loving their neighbors means being a nice person, kind of being a doormat, kind of laying down and just doing whatever your neighbors want. It's like, that's not good. That's actually really bad. When Jesus says to love our neighbor, we're supposed to go back to the law, God's law, as particularly summarized in the 10 Commandments, and look at what does it mean to love our neighbor. Well, there's no stealing in there, and so it would be wrong for the state to kidnap and steal children. So we can clearly say that.
Right. One way to love my neighbor is to make sure the state can't come to their house and steal their child because they decided not to chop off their genitals.
Exactly.
That seems like a pretty important aspect to loving my neighbor.
I know. It's wild, isn't it? But this is just so much libertarian kind of live and let live, coexist, kind of a saturation, you might say, of evangelicalism. And Colorado's not abnormal. This is common in the United States and Western Christianity. And I think that kind of attitude, and we talked about it on a previous episode, that kind of attitude is a losing strategy. It's just basically dimitude. You're accepting, like Christians in Egypt or other places, where you're just kind of accepting that we lose down here. We can't get involved politically. And there's tons of ways to get involved politically. I'll bring up an example. And maybe you can help me think about this on air live, but there were some organizations that were kind of latecomers to this, and we need all the help we can get. So I'm not going to try to speak too negatively of their kind of jumping on kind of against this wickedness. I want anyone who is opposed to this wickedness to speak out against it. But one organization that's been a pretty subversive organization in the Southern Baptist Convention is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the ERLC. And they came out and they released kind of a statement saying they're opposed to this. And their two recommendations were basically pray and write into your legislator. And they made it pretty difficult to write into your legislature. But again, thank God they said something. That's good that a national organization. But there's not a lot of equipping for pastors. Like, pastors, if you want to engage on this, but you're scared of losing your 501c3 status, here's how you can talk about it prudently. Here's 3 options that you can plug into your sermon text tomorrow to speak on this issue. Hey, did you want to mobilize other Christians to rally at the Capitol? You could do this. Hey, do you want a representative from the ERLC? Hey, do you want to speak to a lawyer? So you don't have to be the bad guy, pastor. You could interview a lawyer at your church from the ADF or something. So there's lots of options that we can equip Christians on to think politically. But unfortunately, many evangelicals are just kind of stuck in kind of this liberal order coexist world.
Yeah, there's a lot there, because this is the main thing I wanted to hit on this. So in any other situation, the left has an entire network of activists, an entire network of NGOs that is primed and ready to go the minute that legislation that they hate appears in a place like Colorado or Florida or something like that, right? Like, they immediately start airdropping people into the state to start canvassing, organizing, making sure that they coordinate legal maneuvers, PR, all of this stuff. There are so many different organizations that do this for the left on a consistent basis, and they get heavily funded. People make entire livings doing nothing but running around on the left and smacking down legislation like this that they hate from the other side, right? And you have obviously organizations like the ADL who professionally go around and threaten to sue anyone who might restrict or speak out against the Jewish religion or ethnos or anything else. So there are religions in the United States that have organizations well funded and extremely powerful who throw their weight around and immediately kill legislation like this in the crib, right? If you have legislation that is stealing Christian children from Christian parents, there should be an organization that immediately deploys itself to go stop them. That is Christian persecution. This should be as obvious as possible to anyone else. Now, obviously, you guys are starting something, and that's awesome, right? But the fact that you had to start it is just insane to me. That the fact that the left has this massive infrastructure and network and everything else, that they would not hesitate to drop the hammer on any aspect of something that targeted certain groups, certain religions, would have deleterious effect. Like that, the fact that that is just a rapid deployment thing that the left is ready to do at any moment, and the right doesn't even. They're just kind of like, well, I don't know. Have you thought about writing a letter? Have you a strongly worded letter? Like that's actually the response we're getting from major Christian organizations. It just seems insane to me.
It is insane. And what's frustrating about things like the letter is that the RLC didn't give you a template. Heritage does great on this. Heritage, if you're looking for the link, I can send it to you, Auron, but we put it on our website, fight1312.com, where it's you can immediately, they've got a template, all the stuff ready to go. You can do, we're trying to do that every day to just really get those letters in. That's not wrong. But like you said, it was kind of a joke that we had a group chat of pastors who were just kind of, encouraging one another, praying for one another. Hey, what are you going to do for this? And also sharing articles and trying to equip each other to think better, because we're not getting a lot of that from our big Eva overlords. We've kind of left that behind. And so the fact that one of our pastors had to turn his GoDaddy site, and for a week, the site was still Fight 1312 or pastorchrisgoebel.godaddy.com. We had to convince him to go buy fight1312.com so it didn't look so bad. But what a joke that Christians aren't that mobilized and unified around defending Christian families, much less we're American citizens, much less defending the rights of our neighbors. We claim to love our neighbors, and we should be, of all people, concerned about this legislation, because yes, against Christians, form the phalanx, the shield wall, the vanguard, whatever you want to call it, for Christians. But don't just settle for that. We actually want good for our neighbors, and it's not good for your neighbor's kid to go trans. It's not good for your neighbor to be trans. That's common Christian basic doctrine. And the fact that we have such a lack of mobilization, I really don't understand. Maybe you understand what happened being in politics, but I don't understand what happened, because Focus on the Family used to be really involved, getting people to rallies, speaking out against stuff. I mean, I think it was 1992, Colorado had an amendment on the ballot to define marriage between a man and a woman. And from my understanding, what happened was a lot of the churches, they were happy about that, but then the left treated them so poorly. They were like, maybe this is the big thing for a lot of evangelicals, we harmed our witness to them. Maybe they misinterpreted what we wanted. We actually do love them in a godlike love, but we have to tone down our rhetoric in order to appease them. And my message continues to be to Christians: you cannot appease the left. The left are people that hate God. They hate God, and they don't want good for you. And going back to kind of the letters and the suggestions, what I heard in the testimony, I listened to about 5 hours of the 10-hour testimony in the House, and I saw the TERF speaking very clearly about how this is bad, how it's wicked, how it's evil. But I would hear Christians get up and provide testimony, and they would always give the benefit of the doubt to the legislators. They would say, oh, we know that you care about people, and I know gay people and trans people in my life, and I don't wish any evil on them, and I don't wish any harm. We're just concerned. We're just concerned that this might be too much. And it was kind of the same tepid response from a lot of big organizations like the RLC, where it's kind of framed in this kind of we're just concerned. It's not good. It's not the best to care for people. It's no. This is wicked. This is really bad. We need to warn people from the Bible, and not just from the Bible, from nature. This is bad legislation, and God will judge you. when you do this kind of stuff. We know this as Christians. We know this is how God works. God poured out all of his judgment on Jesus for those who are found in Christ on the cross of Christ. And we have life in him, and we have his righteousness now. But God will deal with evil. And so we should warn people that propagate this stuff, like, this is wickedness and judgment will come upon you. And we don't want that for you. That's a loving thing to say to people. And a lot of Christians don't know how to say that well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the fact that it isn't Focus on the Family still based in Colorado. Did they reach out to you? Are they taking any action? Like, that is insane to me. I grew up listening to James Dobson, to and from school every day. My mom had him on in the car, every time. And it's just wild to me that, something that used to be a powerful cultural force. I mean, Focus on the Family had a booth in London at the ARC conference, but they're not going to take care of business in their own backyard. Like, that is insane. And I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to just bag on Focus on the Family here, but this is an incredible failure. And honestly, someone needs to bag on these people at this point. Like, that's the purpose of your organization. If you exist for anything, then you have to exist for this. Why is anyone sending you a single dollar? If you can't get off your butt in your home state and keep kids from getting mutilated, it's just unconscionable. How can you call yourself a Christian organization if you can't be bothered?
I agree. Yeah, that's why we wrote the letter that we did, because it was, and you can go find the letter at fight1312.com. I mean, we called them all out because think of another organization, Compassion International. And this kind of goes back, and we could talk about the heat map meme if you want, but like, there's kind of this managerial class and evangelicalism, and there's a bunch of ministries that became global and corporate, and they have an HR department, and Compassion International deals with children all around the world. And in their own backyard, they're not going to lift a finger. I realize it may be off mission for them a little bit, okay? But it seems a little on mission to care about kids and the welfare of kids in their own state. Like, what good is it if you send millions of dollars overseas to go care for children overseas, but you lose the ones in your own nation? And this is a very big problem in the church today for a lot of people. They have a greater kind of love for the nations than they do for their own neighbor. They have no problem with missions overseas, spreading the gospel overseas. It's very highly commended, and I don't either. I think it's great. We need to disciple the nations. Very good. God bless. But if you do that to the detriment of your own, and you do that to the detriment of the people in your own backyard, and this is why Trump was so wildly popular. He actually cares about the people in America. This is why the Trump agenda is so popular with people in America, because he does care about the people in America. Whereas most evangelical leaders, they're very obsessed with, like, people over there, but let's not focus on the people right next door. And so, I don't get it. I mean, the same thing with Young Life and Navigators. These are major Christian organizations. I'm pretty sure Young Life is bigger, but they deal with teens, who are struggling. A lot of teens that are in public schools that are struggling with this stuff. And this is like right down the middle for them to knock out of the park and release a good statement and equip the people that lead their organization to get involved in this fight. And so I do want that. I hope people don't hear me becoming bitter or something like that against them, but more just shocked, about how they won't get involved. If they were to get involved, I would be their biggest advocate. This is how I felt. It reminds me of how I felt. I was telling my wife this and a couple of friends in 2020, when we saw kind of cities burning down, when we saw the lockdowns. And I'm like, where are the guys who apparently they have all the credentials, they lead institutions, they lead seminaries, they have publications that say Christian on them. Why aren't they dispensing all of their ammo to protect the church? Why aren't they dispensing all of their ammo to give us better thinking on how we should engage in politics? And the guns were just silent. They were just not there. And so this time when this came around, I was like, well, they're not going to show up again. Like, they already proved they're not going to come to the battlefield. Right. So we're just going to say it. We're just going to call it out. And if they come to the table, that's awesome. I'm so happy for them. I want more of them. We need more of them, because so many evangelicals, they just need basic education on this stuff. And that's what we've lost. We've lost basic discipleship, and we've settled for kind of entertaining the masses and trying to reach, the person with the rainbow flag next door, which we do want to reach with the gospel, but you're not going to reach them with the gospel by watering down God's truth itself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a pastor, but I feel like it's fair, to make a what should be not a radical or bold statement. But if your Christian organization can't defend the children in your state cannot be bothered to stop the mutilation of children in your state, then you have a useless Christian organization. Like, you know it by its fruits. And as you pointed out, these things are already hollow after we saw what happened in 2020. And so it becomes incredibly important. And this is a huge problem. And again, I'm with you. I would prefer to see these organizations turn around. This is not me, I'm not trying to say like, oh, these all just need to get burned to the ground. But one of the things that needs to happen here is like everyone needs a gut check. All these people need to go on the floor. For way too long, the right in general, but specifically the Christian right, has just been sending its dollars to random organizations because they exist. Because that's what good Christians do. That's what good conservatives do. They work hard at their job and then they write a check to some activist organization somewhere, and that check goes and it does the stuff that the Democrats do in their spare time. So I'm working. I got a family. This is always what I hear, right? Christians can't show up to protests. They got other things to do. They got jobs. Well, that's great, but the left is running your country. So
that's right.
Cool. It's nice that you have I'm busy. I got a job. Well, the left has your kid. So I'm glad you've got a job. The left has got your children. So maybe it's time to put your children before that. Maybe it's time for a Christian organization who receives dollars from people who expect them to stand up for their actual beliefs and actual principles to go out and protect these people. And if the organizations that exist right now are unwilling to do that, then they are not fit for purpose, and they either need to be radically reformed or they need to be replaced. And if your understanding of Christianity prevents you from defending children from being mutilated, then I think you have bad Christianity. I think you have Christianity that simply does not follow Christ. And I'm sorry, but we cannot pull punches on this anymore. Like, there's just no time to mince words on this. Like, this is enough. Okay. If you ever want to change things, if you ever want to dig out of this hole, now is the time. You got the momentum. You got some breathing room. Now is not the time to sit back and say, ooh, I want to be careful. I need to win everybody with kindness. No, now is the time to secure victories, clean house, build real institutions, secure actual political power that allows you to protect Christians and children now.
Absolutely agree. And that's why we've been saying this is indicative of kind of the broader evangelical landscape, where that kind of drain the swamp mentality. It's time for the swamp to be drained. And if you go to one of these churches or you're part of one of these institutions that refuses to lift a finger now, then you need to abandon ship, because they are not going to protect you from this stuff. They're not going to teach you about this stuff. They're not going to lift a finger. The shepherd's job is to guard the sheep. And if the shepherd cannot guard the sheep in this moment, he has abdicated his role completely. And it's funny to me, pure religion, as the Bible teaches, is caring for the orphans and widows. And it's as if somehow we got in our mind that, okay, if that's pure religion, then we should create a bunch of orphans. We should let the state kidnap a bunch of kids and make a bunch of orphans so that we can care with it. And then the left essentially takes Romans 1 and uses it as their policy handbook. I mean, that's just what they're doing all throughout the state right now, as far as the Democrats go. That's the other thing, Warren. That's what I find baffling to me, is for a lot of Christian organizations. I saw this from, I believe, the Gospel Coalition, if anybody reads that anymore, but they wrote an article explaining the bill, why it's bad. And I do think it was written by someone from Focus on the Family. So kudos to them for that article at the Gospel Coalition. They refused to name the Democrats. I mean, this is a one-party issue because we have a one party in the majority in Colorado running the state, the left, and it's all Democrats. And that's what I think a lot of Christians get confused on, especially in places like Denver, Boulder, other blue counties in Colorado. They don't just want to name it. No, the Democrats, they're practicing wickedness. Oh, you can criticize the Republicans all you want. I'm not, there's a lot of feckless Republicans out there, but I'm saying this is a line in the sand moment for Christians to wake up and be like, no, Democrats, they're practicing wickedness. And any Christian who would participate in that, they should be ashamed of that. And for a lot of us, we were trying to warn them, like, look, I know that you may find Trump uncouth, or you may not be a fan of Republican fiscal policy or something like that, but this kind of stuff, this is evil. And you cannot participate in it. And that shouldn't, I realize that may upset some people in a church somewhere. I don't know where, but somewhere. And I realize for some pastors that may require them to say something they've never said before. Well, it's time to join the party. let's go, let's fight this thing, because there's so many good Christians and churches in Colorado. There's so many, Auron. And that's true not just in Colorado, but around the United States. And if we could provide actual tangible political leadership without needlessly mixing the two spheres, without mixing church and state to a degree that would be inappropriate historically, but doing so with our rights. Like we are Americans. We have the right to advocate for our own interests, and we can just do things. You can speak on things. You can just say things, and you don't have to be so concerned with like, well, who am I going to upset? That is such a weak, mealy-mouthed approach to discipleship. We need strong Christian families, strong Christian men to step up to the plate. I saw one guy, I believe he lives out here, Victor Marks. He kind of has a big following on Instagram and other places, and he deals with this stuff all around the world. Thank God he spoke up recently. And so there's lots of people joining the fight. I'm really excited because there's a lot of people responding to the call. A lot of people who, I'll be honest with you, Auron, like in kind of our circles in the pastors in Colorado, we are seeing our church and our pastorate at the Well Church in Boulder, Colorado, is kind of seen as like definitely conservative. And we're not afraid to speak our mind. We have a lot of fun doing it. We try to equip Christians to think seriously about the times and live a holy life and righteous life before the Lord. And so a lot of pastors will kind of give us the side eye, like, oh, well, you know, you're just a radical right winger, all this kind of stuff. But here's the deal. When it came down to it, and we sent out a call and an email to these people, a lot of them came up to the plate because they're like, you know what? We may have different approaches to how we engage in culture. We may have different approaches to how we speak about these things, but this is a line in the sand. And I'm seeing that all over the place in Colorado. So we're seeing a lot of good churches, but the mega churches are just slow to act. That's why I'm so encouraged, like I said, for Pastor Jeff down at Brave Church, Pastor Jim at Flatirons Church. So we're seeing a lot of churches get involved, but it's hard not to have a salt the earth attitude with these organizations and other Christians who have influence in our state and in our nation who don't get involved in this stuff. I'm kind of like, look, I'm not going to anathematize you. I might see you on the other side, but you're useless right now. You're not going to defend us, and you're not going to speak for God's truth in the world.
Yeah. This is a moral softball, right? Like if you there are things that are tricky, there are things that are nuanced, there are difficult issues to navigate. This is not one of them. If you cannot stand up on this, if you do not grasp this as evil, if you do not understand that you need to take a stand here, then you just never will. You are useless. You are already gelded as the children that you are opening up to exactly that same process. And the last thing I want to discuss before we wrap this up, you talked about advocating for our own interests. Like, we're Americans, we have the right to advocate for our rights, our own interests. I think that's important because actually I think a lot of Christians don't think they have that right. I think that especially with the discussion of individualism versus collectivism, right? That we're not allowed to think of ourselves as collective. We're not allowed to think of ourselves as having a shared interest, a specific interest that we need to advocate for. Some of this comes from the fact that a lot of people just assume Christianity is kind of the background culture for the United States. So we're, of course we're Christian. Everyone has these beliefs. They just need to come back to them. We just need a slight correction. No, unfortunately, what has happened is that Christianity, real Christianity, has become much and much less of a focus. Yes, there are people who are nominally Christian. That's better than not being nominally Christian. I'm a fan of cultural Christianity. A lot of people have their concerns about it. I am not one of them. But ultimately, the number of focusing Christians who understand their doctrine and hold to their faith has shrunk. And you have to advocate for these people. You have to, especially when we look at Hindu temples being built in Texas, Muslim towns being built in Texas. Other religions are coming here, guys. The day of Christian default, oh, well, we can just assume everyone's Christian, and even if they're not a professing Christian, they've got a Christian background, a Christian ethos. That is no longer the case. You have to be able to collectively, yes, that's right. I'm on a conservative show. I'm on a right-wing show. I'm on the Blaze, and I am about to say this. You need to be able to collectively advocate for your interests. You need to be able to go to a state legislature and say, Christians are a group. We are the dominant group. We deserve preference. We deserve protection. We have a collective interest in our communities and our families and our faith. And we are pushing for that. And you, the politician, you, the organization, will deliver on this if you would like our support. You want our money, you want our votes, you want our time. You better get this done. If you don't, we're going to go find someone else to do this. I think we have to break this I'm an individual, I'll be left alone thing. Like the people who want to win are going to beat you. The people who want to win are going to beat the people who want to be left alone. You have to be able to collectively take action and fight against this. And I'm really glad that you guys were willing to put this together in the space that you did. And I hope that it only grows more from here.
Thanks so much, Warren. Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is exactly what I have a heart for the church to know more about, because I think when many pastors enter the ministry, they get ordained or by other means, they somehow adopted, like there's a lot in theology today about how we have no home here. You know, this isn't our eternal home. And so when a lot of pastors in the ministry, they kind of adopt this attitude of like, well, we're ambassadors for Christ, and my allegiance is primarily to the kingdom of God, which of course true in a sense, but they've taken that to mean therefore any other kind of allegiance I have to my people or my place, that's basically not only useless, it's actually against the kingdom of God. And therefore for me to advocate for earthly things, they view it as worldly, fleshly, pursuing power. They love to talk about the ring and Lord of the Rings and how that's bad. And so they don't have a concept of like what it means to actually be a human. And this stems from poor theological anthropology, where it's like, of course, when we're Christians, we have a citizenship in heaven. And also, you still have a body and you still have actions to do here. You should have children, have families, take them to church. You should make money. You should have a job. All this stuff is very basic. This is what we pray for in the Lord's Prayer, that he would give us our daily bread. And we pray for his kingdom to come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven, that earth would be kind of a magnifier of what heaven will be. And so we should take an interest in this because when Christ commanded us to go and make disciples of all nations, he has all the authority in heaven and on earth. And so it's not wrong to advocate for political power, to advocate for, I mean, people are going to accuse, if you do this, people are going to accuse you of kind of imposing your way of life on them or imposing your theology. I'm like, these are stupid arguments to me. This is a non sequitur. It's a distraction because the left already isn't trying to impose their totalitarian tyranny on everyone. Okay, the day of coexist is over. They're not looking to coexist with you. They want to dominate you. They want to steal your children so that they can cut off their genitals. We are not playing nice anymore. And so, yeah, we do need to work together across denominations. And it really is not incongruent with American history. It's actually very consistent with American history that we should advocate for our own interest. We can do that with other people. And we should apply pressure and use power to advocate for what we believe is best for society. Americans, and particularly Christians, are totally willing for other people to advocate for their own interests. They're very like, well, you know, that's just how they are. They're lost people, so they're going to advocate for sin. And it's like, we shouldn't want that. We should not want more sin in the world. We want the world to be more Christian. We want America to be more Christian, just like I want Ethiopia to be more Christian. We should want the entire world to be more Christian, and we can advocate for that using political means. And that's not inconsistent with some kind of with your citizenship in heaven. You don't have to embrace this kind of exilic theology where you're an exile here, and that means that basically you have no loyalties, you have no family, you have no children, all that kind of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, this kind of stuff is very communistic. It's very egalitarian, where they really like, if you boil down a lot of these people's theology, it's very like, I'm not more loyal to my wife than anyone else. I'm not more loyal to my children than anyone else. That's like basically communism. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians have adopted that mentality from a lot of writers and thinkers like Russell Moore, who have propagated this stupid idea about how we're exiles and we live in Babylon and all this kind of stuff. And they haven't really gotten into the sources. And this gets into pulpits, and this gets into the evangelical immigration table. I could keep going, but it's just so sad that Christians oftentimes are biblically illiterate because the pastors are biblically illiterate because the elites in evangelicalism have been propagating wokeness and communist thinking to the seminaries and to Christian leaders.
Well, Chase, if people want to know more about what's going on or how they can lend their support, where should we send them?
Go to fight1312.com. You can get involved there. You can sign yourself up there so that you can stay in the fight. We provide rolling updates there. I'll also be providing some updates as we go on my podcast, Foolproof Theology. You can also go over to the Center for Baptist Leadership. I have a couple articles. In fact, we're hosting a space today as we're recording this afternoon, 5 o'clock Mountain Time, to talk more about these issues. So very active. Follow me on Twitter at @JChaseDavis. I try to post about this stuff, as do my friends. But that's probably enough information for people to stay up to date.
All right, great. Yeah, if you can head over to that Twitter space when we're done there, feel free. It sounds like you're going to have much more information there. All right, let's see. We got the questions of the people here real quick. Tiny Stupid Demon says, I miss living somewhere that is never in the news, waiting for national coverage of Denver Mayor Meth Camp Mike's homeless hell hotels. Aurora is bad enough, but I studiously avoid going into Denver now.
I can
Don't know.
provide
I'm not
commentary.
super familiar with Colorado, so I don't know if you had any feedback on that.
Yeah, I could definitely. Yeah, he's ruined Denver. I mean, Denver's crazy. What's interesting, Auron, is that a lot of people in business now, who aren't Christians, are speaking up about the policies that they're implementing in Denver and how they're just allowing homelessness to run rampant. This is where, of course, the Venezuelan gang was, Aurora.
Yep.
And so, yeah, Johnson is absolutely around the city. Everyone I talk to, they don't want to go to Denver. It's needles everywhere. There's poop on the side. They're trying to turn it into San Francisco. And this is consistent with what they tried to do in 2020. A lot of Denver and Boulder, they were taking their cues from San Francisco. They thought San Francisco was like it's everyone who's liberal on the West Coast wants to be San Francisco. So let's model San Francisco. Well, you get it now. That's what's happening.
Well, I certainly hope that you are successful. I am very glad that you guys began that organization. And I think it's critical, again, that Christian organizations as they exist now, it's time for them to put up or shut up. Okay. Like you if you were waiting for your cultural moment, if you were waiting for the space where you had backup from the White House, you had the possibility of cultural victory, you have the momentum when it comes to possible legislative action, this is it. So there's no other excuse. There's no other time. Now is the time. If it's a organization that can stand up for children, then it should be standing up for children. If it can't be standing up for children, then it needs to be replaced by something that can. So make sure that you're taking out Chase's organization and that you are looking for opportunities to start something or plug into something like that in your home state, because these things will come for your home state as well, and you need to be prepared. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. If it's your first time on this channel, of course, please make sure that you go ahead and subscribe, click the bell, notifications, everything, so you know when we're going live. If you want to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast network. When you do leave a rating or review, it really helps with the algorithm. And of course, if you want to support the show, you can head over to shopblazemedia.com, pick up something from the Auron MacIntyre collection, or you can subscribe to the Blaze Network with that promo code Auron. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.